Good morning. Welcome to the Board of Water and Power Commissioners meeting. Today is Tuesday, April 13, 2021. This proceeding is broadcast on Channel 35. The exact broadcast times can be found by contacting Channel 35. Assistant General Counsel.
Thank you. As permitted under Governor Newsom's emergency order of March 17, 2020, all of the board are teleconferencing from remote locations. Also, consistent with the governor's order, all public comment will be taken telephonically. You may announce a recess if we have difficulties or lose a quorum due to technical difficulties. Members of the public wanting to offer public comment should call 213-306-3065 and use meeting code 187-676-7984# and follow the queue. Again, the phone number is 213-306-3065 and the meeting code is 187-676-7984#. There is a call moderator, and when it is your turn to speak, please state whether you are speaking on specific agenda items. You have 2 minutes. It is important when you are going to speak to please turn down the volume of your devices so we do not get audio feedback. Board Secretary will now call the roll.
President McCLAIN-HILL.
Present.
Vice President Reyes.
Present.
Commissioner BARAD.
Present.
Commissioner LEHRER. Commissioner LEHRER. You're muted. Can you unmute yourself, please? So we see you.
You see me? Okay.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady.
Present. LEHRER.
Present.
Commissioner, thank you. 5 members present and a quorum. Opening of the board meeting by President McCLAIN-HILL.
Okay, terrific. Did you call Commissioner BARAD? I'm not sure I heard you do that.
I did.
Okay,
I did not.
Maybe loud.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Before beginning the balance of our agenda, I am pleased to move forward item number 16 to item number 1. That will be a presentation to Lewis Carr Jr. for his service at LADWP. And to kick off this presentation, I understand that Mr. Harrison is on deck.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been my privilege to follow after Lewis in the ITS division until such time as a new CITO can be named. And it's a privilege because he really did leave a great organization. And if we say that the measure of an organization is a measure of its leadership, then I can really tell you that I found a talented, dedicated, well-organized ITS division completely focused on its mission to serve the ITS needs of this department. And that is a direct result of Lewis's leadership. And then if we also say that the character of a leader defines the leader, then you don't have to ask too many people that served under and alongside with Lewis to let you have them tell you that he is a man of honesty, integrity, one who always had the trust of his people. You'll see in the board resolution or hear in the board resolution a brief sampling of the initiatives he undertook. And one of my division heads told me this morning that quite frankly, we would have never gotten through the pandemic without Lewis and the initiatives that he brought on the IT side. Humility is his calling card, and he has definitely always sought after his people's best interests. He really did use his leadership skills to influence the staff in ITSD to really enthusiastically work towards the goal of delivering innovative IT services and processes and developing his staff. So, and maybe a final exclamation point on that is that he really has been the best at customer service who's ever led that ITSD division. So therefore, I heartily recommend honoring Lewis through your board's resolution. And I believe Marty has a few words to say as well.
Yes, thanks, Rich. I just wanted to thank Louis for the years he spent here. Although he was not at the department for a long time in terms of career length, he absolutely made a difference. And when I took over my current role, IT had been split into 3 different organizations, and Louis was wondering what his role would be, with me as general manager. And I said, you've got to get things back together and make sense of what was a very splintered, effort at the time, and get us through some challenging times as we worked on CCB follow up, and certainly dealing with contractors who we had that we needed to really kind of rein in what was going on with IT security, the issues for billing. And Louis took on the challenge, and I really appreciate the fact that he got everyone organized together and headed in the same direction, and really set us on a good path. So we missed him. Luckily, because he didn't retire, he's actually be able to be retained to help us provide some expert advice as we transition to a new Chief Information Technology Officer. But Louis, you made a tremendous difference in the time that you were here, and especially in the last year and a half, not only during the pandemic and getting us able to work from home effectively, but also just in organizing our IT efforts and charting a course, and we'll see during the IT report that Rich will have later on today, this morning, that the fruits of a lot of the work that you put together are really coming to fruition in the next few months. And so, it's only because of the groundwork you laid. So, Louis, want to thank you and congratulate you, and wish you the best in the years ahead. I know you've got a lot of busy family life things coming up for you, and I appreciate that. You've got a lot of things that are important to you to deal with, and we will miss you, but we're glad that we still can engage from time to time with you as we make this transition.
Thank you. Thank you all. It's certainly a surprise and certainly an honor to work at LADWP. I've had tremendous support from the board president in particular, Marty, from you, great working relationships, Rick, Ann Santilli, just to name a few. And great team members that I inherited, and I hope that some of the foundation that I laid continues on to help accelerate the modernization effort. But it has been, I feel good about many of the foundational things we put in place to help the organization, ultimately to help our customers. But I thank you, Marty, for the opportunity, and Commissioner President for the opportunity to serve the citizens of Los Angeles. Thank you so much.
Louis, I'm sorry, was there someone else that was seeking to speak before I get started? No, okay. Louis, thank you so very much for those remarks. It is quite a testament to your leadership and your impact that this department recommends, that the executive staff of this department recommends, and that this board honors your service. It's been noted that you have not spent a lot of time at the department, and in a place where years are often measured, or careers are measured in decades. It says a great deal that someone with your quiet but determined leadership skills, your tenacity, your actual and deep commitment to the development of your people, and your really extraordinary work in getting us up and running through the pandemic is being acknowledged here today, and I'm happy to be a part of it. The resolution that the Board of Commissioners is being asked to consider at this time reads as follows. Whereas Louis Carr Jr. led the Information Technology Services Division. Excuse me, if you're not speaking, could you mute your mic? There's a lot of feedback on my end. Okay. Um, Let the Information Technology Services Division as the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power's Chief Information Technology Officer from November 14th, 2016, and has now resigned effective February 5th, 2021, providing distinguished service to the City of Los Angeles and its Department of Water and Power. And whereas Louis Carr Jr. provided vision and established a variety of initiatives, including the Information Technology Project Management Office, to help track major initiatives and optimize the use of staff to help meet the LADWP's goals and objectives, a cloud strategy to guide LADWP's ability to leverage new solutions, which has become increasingly significant as more vendors use cloud technology, a dedicated information systems manager to oversee the matrix staff, which helps emphasize the importance of IT resources to support water and power system initiatives. And whereas Louis Carr Jr. responded to the pandemic by quickly creating opportunities for more people to work from home using different technologies, enabled the use of video conferencing in the cloud, and extended it to hundreds of concurrent employees, and worked to address the Board of Water and Power Commissioners' need for virtual board meetings. And whereas Louis Carr Jr. developed the ITSD workforce as a whole, providing not only technical guidance to staff, but also professional development, established the IT internship program, increased the use of trainee classes, including the applications programmer and systems aid classes, established and implemented standardized core training criteria for entry-level civil service classes, laid the groundwork for a leadership training academy, participated in the establishment of the Cybersecurity Analyst Series to be utilized at LADWP and other city departments, collaborated on transferring diverse department-wide training curriculum into LADWP's training software application, and drafted a more centralized program of governance and procedures for creating, delivering, and tracking training across LADWP, and improved our cybersecurity posture by creating the Office of Chief Information Security Officer. And whereas Louis Carr Jr. was an outstanding leader and colleague, genuinely concerned for his staff, and supported them by always being willing to step up and ensure he and his team did their part to advance projects, brought much needed executive leadership and oversight to the IT planning function, always managed to stay calm, responsive, and collaborative, and establish lasting relationships between ITSD and other business units with his gentle personality and customer focus. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Water and Power Commissioners, on behalf of the management of this department, its employees, and the citizens of the City of Los Angeles, thank and commend Louis Carr Jr. for his service as a highly dedicated, motivated, inspirational, and employee-oriented manager who embodied LADWP's values of professional excellence, leadership, and commitment to customer service, and extends best wishes to him for a productive, healthy, and long retirement. With the reading of the resolution, I would like to entertain a motion for its passage at this time.
I so move.
I'd like to second that motion. Would you please call the roll?
President McCLAIN-HILL,
Aye.
Vice President Reyes,
Aye.
Commissioner BARAD,
Aye.
Commissioner LEHRER,
Aye.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady,
Enthusiastically, aye.
5 ayes.
Thank you. The motion passes. And Louis, again, with our tremendous gratitude and deep affection, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We'd like to now move to, are there any additional comments? Seeing none, but we'd like to now move to general public comment.
Good morning, callers. Please state your full name and the agenda item you will be speaking on. Please be mindful that you will have 2 minutes for comment. The first caller, area code 310 with the prefix 804. Please state your name and the item number.
Connor Everts, item 8A.
I couldn't hear.
What's your name and please?
Yes, Connor Everts for item 8A.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, commissioners, for this opportunity. I want to thank staff for extending the time period in response to the urban water management plan. And just to let you all know that there will be a series of comment letters due today from various coalitions from the Eastern Sierra, the local environmental justice groups, and environmental organizations in Los Angeles, and we look forward to your response to these issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Caller with the area code 213, prefix 718, please state your name and the item you'll be speaking on. Caller with area code 213, prefix 718. Hearing no response, we will now close all public comments.
Terrific, thank you. We'll now move to item number 3, report from the general manager.
Morning, Madam President and commissioners. Good to virtually see everyone again, and I'm hoping that we're not too far off in the future from being able to enjoy the retrofitted boardroom with the new technology and be able to be in person. I have a few items just briefly to report on, and actually I'll be calling on some of the senior staff to report on that. First off is on April 1st, we had our final meeting of the LA 100 advisory group. The board will remember that we did a presentation on the LA 100 study. The last piece of that presentation was discussing the financial analysis. And so a lot of the board have not had a chance to see that. In just a second, I'll ask Ann to recap the key findings of that just briefly. But I did want to say that you know, as we had the big press conference with Mayor Garcetti, and we've gotten a lot of notice in the power industry and really throughout the state for this effort. And so, you know, the department staff worked very hard on this alongside our partners from NREL, and certainly the board's interest in this and insistence that we do a thorough job and do a very inclusive job with dozens of members of the public involved has really made this you know, a great project and a great outcome, and really provides us you know, options and a roadmap for how to move forward in the future. So Ann, since most of the board were not did not see this last piece, can you just briefly recap what was presented on the last day of the advisory group, please?
Sure, thank you, Marty. Good morning, commissioners. We did actually analyze NREL's costs. Now, one thing that was significant from our information from theirs is they see a significant load growth, and that's from all the electric vehicles. So as we saw at the beginning of their presentation, about a 20% increase if we could increase electric vehicles and building stock. And if that was to happen and we were to successfully roll this out, our rate increases would actually be somewhere by 2045 between 25 cents and 36 cents per kilowatt hour, assuming our current rate structure. So it gave us the confidence that if we could grow the load, as do our projects and the costs that NREL has identified, that this would be a cost-effective option for our customers. So our next steps are to work with the Office of Public Accountability. We've shared our data and our assumptions, And I think they're going to do some stress tests on it, look at some different scenarios or some information to provide their report back to City Council on this NREL 100 study. But it was very eye-opening to see that when we added in our own department costs, plus the external generation and transmission costs that NREL predicted for us, and the load that they saw that we could achieve, that it would not be a significant cost on our customers if we were to achieve all those items.
Thank you very much, Ann. So that's good news and helps give us confidence that the path forward is actually achievable and affordable. And again, a lot of that has to do with the increased electrification of transportation industry and other parts of society. Also on April 1st, we had another big event, kind of a unsung, unseen event that actually has a direct impact on our ability to access renewable energy, access renewable energy and energy at a great price and save our customers money. REYCO was out at the Energy Control Center at 0001 hours on April 1st at the launch of the energy imbalance market. You may recall a few years ago, we brought this to the board. We started a major project. There's one day a year that we could enter the market. And this was our day. And so it was either this or wait for another year. We worked very hard. The team worked exceptionally hard on this, on preparing ourselves and our own electronics monitoring system, the metering and such, to be able to enter the market. And we did that on April 1st on schedule, as we had originally projected several years ago. REYCO, would you like to highlight about the energy imbalance market and what that did for us and what that experience was like, please?
Thank you, Marty. Would love to. So this is probably the most significant event that's happened on the power system, and this is like a once-in-a-career event. That's the magnitude of this. Back in 2016, when the board approved this, joining the California Energy Imbalance Market, or CAISO, we estimated a net benefit to LADWP of $12 million. Since inception of the EIM markets, market participants have realized $1.2 billion in benefits. So some of the highlights since we went live on April 1st, we've had 37,000 megawatt hours worth of transactions in the CAISO markets. The average price that about 70% of those transactions were buying from on a real-time 5-minute basis from other entities. And the average price of that was $6.63, which is significantly below our average cost of power. Most of that, almost all of it, was during the middle of the day when there's excess and abundant solar throughout the western region. At times we were importing 600 megawatt hours of 600 megawatts of that solar resources. And what's critical about that, much of that power, if we don't have the EIM benefit, those renewable resources get curtailed. And so this helps the overall region get more and more renewables. It provides a great benefit for LA. We get the renewables that low cost power that really provides a benefit to our customers. So what does that mean, and how did LA prepare for this? This was a significant, I can't emphasize that. There were over 300 LADWP staff involved in this effort at one point or another. Extremely complex. When we talk about Lewis Carr and his impact on the utility, there were 4 different software systems that we had to implement and integrate within all our activities at the Energy Control Center. In addition to that, we had to have 3 of our systems upgraded to be able to participate in that EIM market. So it was real critical for his support and his team. Just about every division within the power system was involved in this effort. There were 8 different power system divisions. Outside of the power system, we had CYNTHIA, we had FSO, we had, like I say, Lewis Carr IT, we had environmental with Nancy, we had Joe Romalo, government affairs, we had Aaron Henning with supply chain services. The city attorney's office was just invaluable with all the agreements and documents that had to be processed and approved. And then we brought in 2 consultants because this was a completely new area for us. The project budget was $43.5 million. To date, we've spent $30 million. I would argue it's probably the most, if not the most complex integration the CAISO did, because there were 13 entities that joined before us. There are very unique things within DWP that made us more complex that they had not seen before. So it was big. So going forward, we still have to train and continue to learn how to operate in those markets. I'd like to recognize our load dispatchers from both the energy control system on the grid side as well as the wholesale marketing side. We often forget about the boots on the ground and the training and professionalism and dedication of this staff, particularly Josh Guanyo and David Fife, watching them in real time as they reacted to all the different activities. Because again, this is a real-time market. These are 5 minute, every 5 minute you could get a different dispatch that requires you to take some action or mitigate an issue. So it really was fascinating to watch how the training materialized and the way the team worked together, collaborated in each other, got folks to help identify issues, fix things, work through the challenges that are sure to come on any type of implementation of this complexity. And in my mind, it was a phenomenal success. Yeah, there were some bumps, but we continue to work through those, and I think it will be really good at the end of the day and provide great value for our customers. Two more people that I think really deserve some extra special recognition that were instrumental in the success of this project. Jaime Pinedo, he was the full engineer that managed this project. He was the lighthouse and the only person that was involved in the process from beginning to end. Other person would be Paul Schultz. He's our director of Power External Energy Resources. He took over management of the project about 1.5 years ago, and our system integrator, who has done probably 90% of the EIM integrations, said that he credits our success directly with transitioning that implementation to Paul's group, as well as working closely with the grid ops side. Like Marty said, it was critical. If we missed the April 1st deadline, we were likely 2 years down the road, because there are other people already in queue for next year, which means we have to get back in queue. I'm convinced after watching these folks, there is no obstacle this group cannot overcome. And I want to thank both Paul and Jaime for their commitment, their dedication, and the success of this project, getting all the right stakeholders involved, getting us involved at times when we needed to, and just managing the complexity during a time of COVID when, you know, the Energy Control Center, that's like the brains of the grid, and we had to protect the criticality of that work group and limit the amount of folks that were in there. So that created some great challenges too to be overcome, but just sincerely thank the entire team that participated on this. This will be a huge benefit for DWP. Again, it's a once in a career thing. I'm sad that because of COVID, we can't properly celebrate all the folks that were involved in this, but it was an incredible team and they did a phenomenal job. And that's it.
Great. Thank you, Reiko. And certainly Reiko's leadership was key in this, and she received feedback from CAISO and others at the state level about how seamless our transition was and how well prepared our team was. They were so it was great to see the staff's capability really highlighted and recognized outside. Rich is going to take us in a brief update about our precipitation.
Marty?
Yes, I'm sorry.
May I just say one thing about the comments that Reiko made? First of all, just want to share my incredible enthusiasm and support for what you have, and amazement by what you have accomplished, Reiko, and your team, and everybody that you mentioned. I think many people know that when I joined the board, this was something that was a concern for me, not because I didn't think we could accomplish it. I just knew the complexity of which you spoke and was nervous about everything that would transpire and would we have enough money to accomplish it, and to not only accomplish it and so successfully, but do it under budget. Bravo, everybody. Really, this is, I don't think people think Reiko is prone to exaggeration, but this really, this should be lauded and shouted from the rooftops. I'm very impressed, and that you've already seen savings. Incredible. And you know, it's not over. There's still more implementation. There may be bumps down the way, but really so impressed, and congratulations to all of you. Well done.
Thank you so much for that.
Marty, may I add something?
Certainly.
Likewise, I want to echo those congratulations, and I will say it's not just about the benefits. People get over-focused on the benefits. This is the way increasingly the Western interconnected energy market, of which we are a part, conducts business. And so this is changing a way that the market has done business for almost 80 years. We've taken an important and difficult step. There will be hard steps to follow. The payment cycle for this is much, much, much faster than we're used to. We're likely to encounter accounting problems, and it's always possible in a market that moves this fast to get something backwards every once in a while. So congratulations, there will be bumps. But this is the way the business is increasingly done, and I'm very enthused that we've made the transition, like Nicole said, on schedule and under budget.
Thank you, Dr. Pickle. I appreciate that. And yeah, I think we've made stock traders out of our energy providers. So this is it's a very different world for us.
If I could just weigh in just very briefly, Reiko, you noted that you regret that this is all happening while we're still dealing with the impacts of a global pandemic. I do want to note, Marty and I have had this discussion quite recently. It has not gone unnoticed by obviously senior leadership nor this board that many, many, many people in this department have performed just exemplary service and have done extraordinary work during this last year plus. We will not be under pandemic conditions for very long, and we will identify a way to formally recognize and to celebrate just the tremendous achievements of the employees of this organization. And so I know that, you know, these virtual board meetings don't really expand out that far, but trust and believe that we see, we know, and we know how important it is to recognize a job well done. So to you, your entire team, thank you, and an exemplary job. And just to take a quick minute and to extend that throughout this organization, there's just been so much under such extraordinary conditions. And I know that it's taken a just Herculean effort by many people whose names we don't know, whose faces rarely pop up on screens or in newspapers or, you know, in ceremonial engagements. So to all of them, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now I'll, unfortunately, Rich's news is probably not as positive as Reiko's was, but he has it under control. So Rich is going to bring us up to speed on the our snow condition. You know, April 1st is the official beginning or end of the water year, depending on which way you're looking. And so Rich will bring us up to speed with what the outcome is. And I know there's been some news in the state about, is the governor going to declare a drought emergency? And there's some real differences between what we're seeing in Northern and Central California versus Southern California. And so, Rich, you want to give us a quick update on that, please?
Sure. And there's actually, it is good news because of the efforts that Los Angelinos have done over the years. So the numbers are at April 1st, we're 28% of normal in the Eastern Sierra. That's in our watershed that we operate. In the other imported sources that we collect water from, the Colorado is 88% of normal, and the Northern Sierra is 70% of normal. Now, you may have seen a recent story in the LA Times that talked about this dry year, but as the article pointed out, Southern California faces less pain than Northern California, and the drought conditions are much more severe in other counties in the state. And the story really correctly pointed out the fact that we have made, and really Angelenos have made great efforts, really over decades, if you will, to insulate ourselves from this year-to-year, dry year to dry year periods that we have, and really not being hydrologically dependent anymore by really reducing our demand on those supplies. And I would add to that fact is that in this year, we have the most water stored in the region's history. So we can go from these dry years to dry years without having to be in drought conditions in the city of Los Angeles. Now, we certainly don't take that statistic for granted, and we continue to push out water conservation initiatives, rebates, and social campaigns for conservation. You know, we're currently the only agency in the Southland that offers $400 clothes washer rebates for qualifying models only. And we continue to offer landscape conservation rebates at $3 per foot of turf of grass replaced with California Friendly Landscape. So, and we're unique in that regard. And we have a number of other programs as well. So, whereas it certainly is a dry year, and in fact, probably our runoff this year off to Eastern Sierra will be the third or fourth lowest in history. Because of the investments that we've made in the past decades, we can weather this storm or lack of storms, if you will, this year.
Thank you, Rick.
Yeah.
So lastly, I just wanted to let the board know of what we are doing in response to the COVID and the pandemic. As you're aware, a lot of times when the city has to get word out about different programs, they use our ability to reach customers and our mailing lists, including things we can put inside with the bill inserts to let folks know about different programs. So we did launch an email campaign last week notifying customers about the short-term renters assistance program that's being administered by the Housing and Community Investment Department of Los Angeles. So we are working with the other city departments to help them spread the word about different programs. At the same time, as a number of the board members are aware, we're looking at different concepts, potentially to either find funds to help customers with some debt relief, or create programs by which they can manage, past bills and things where they've had trouble paying. Customer Services is working on more extended payment programs and things for customers, and some other additional ideas that they're going to be packaging those together and bringing them to the board for the board's response and reaction. But we are working to see what things that we can do to provide relief to our customers and to help everyone get back on their feet as we hope that we see the economy starting to recover. And lastly, on the COVID note, we continue testing for employees. We've been gone to providing test kits for employees who want them. There's a lot less interest in testing than there was, probably because of the vaccination rollout. Currently, we have sent well over 7,000 employees. We've offered vaccinations. And I think at this point, between what we've had been able to do the city of LA for vaccinations, and people have got on their own, probably more than half of our employees are vaccinated at this time, which I think is laying the groundwork along with the rest of society or Southern California, with the estimate that by the end of May, most people will have been able to be vaccinated if they so wish. And we're continuing to encourage our employees to get vaccinated and hopefully start to see a return to normal in the next month or two here. So with that, and then of course, communications division continues to roll out regular information on COVID. I'm not sure if all that gets to the board members or not. We certainly can. I make sure you get all the information. It's a lot that we're pushing out, trying to keep employees informed. As always, there's a lot of questions. The news is ongoing and changing regularly. Dr. Israel has been very involved with county health as well as the rest of the medical industry in understanding issues and trying to answer the concerns of employees and such about vaccinations. We saw recent news today about Johnson & Johnson. So we live in a very evolving world. We're trying to stay on top of it. I think we've been very successful. The task force continues to meet twice a week. And I think we're doing a good job of managing through the issue with our employees and continue to serve our customers. So thank you for the chance to give an update. If there's anything the board has a question on, I'll be happy to answer. Otherwise, that completes my report.
Are there any comments or questions from commissioners? All right. Seeing none, Marty, I will be interested in the next, if not the next board meeting, certainly by May, some more formal report on our return to work plans. Just, I think it would be useful to understand what the strategy is around that. I know that there's a lot to balance, and as you indicate, the environment continues to evolve. Also, I do want to compliment the staff, the COVID response team, and the department's overall communications around that. It's been really quite exceptional. So, kudos to corporate safety. Under item number 4, I'm not aware of any motions to be introduced for future consideration at this time. Item 5, comment from ratepayer advocate. Dr. Pickle, is that something that you will defer for questions or items as they come up, or did you have a comment at this time?
We will be commenting on several items in item 8.
Okay, terrific. Several items in item 8. Okay, great. Discussion with neighborhood council. Board secretary, is there anything under this item?
No community impact statements or formal positions were filed by any neighborhood councils on the items on today's agenda.
Thank you. I am not aware of any items that have been called special. So at this time, unless a commissioner has something that they'd like to put on the list, at this time, I'll consider a motion for items 10 through item 15. I'm sorry, items 10 through item 17.
I move approval.
Second.
Will you please call the roll? And I recognize we're voting twice on item 16 since we've already done it, but in any event, 10 through 17.
I on item, there's an item, on item 15, I am abstaining.
Then hold on, let's do this. Let's call the roll on items 10 through 14.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a motion for passage for items 10 through 14?
So moved.
Second.
Yes.
Second.
I will call the roll. President McCLAIN-HILL.
Aye.
Vice President Reyes.
Aye.
Commissioner BARAD.
Aye.
Commissioner LEHRER.
Aye.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady.
Aye.
5 votes yes. Quorum.
Okay, thank you. And I have a motion to approve item 17.
President McCLAIN-HILL.
Is there a motion for item 17?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Terrific. Would you call the roll now, Yvette?
President McCLAIN-HILL.
Aye.
Vice President Reyes.
Aye.
Commissioner BARAD.
Aye.
Commissioner LEHRER.
Aye.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady.
All
Aye.
right.
5 ayes.
Thank you. So items 10 through 14 and item 17 are approved. We will loop back around for item 15 so that we can have a discussion and an independent on that item. Commissioner LEHRER, we'll call that item after when we get to it on the agenda. Okay?
Yeah, I didn't think we had to discuss it. I just was abstaining, but.
It has.
Okay.
The other is the consent calendar. So unless it's on consent, unless everybody's for it, then it can't go as item 10.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, couldn't go under item 7. If we could now move to item 8, please. And I guess we will begin with the Urban Water Management Plan presentation.
Yes, thank you. So the Reason for today's presentation is the department has an act to follow, the Urban Water Management Plan, that will be introduced by Sabrina Sue, who provides oversight and is managing the development of the department's Urban Water Management Plan. We are going to be coming to you in two stages. So we are going to give a presentation of the plan. It is due to the state of California July 1st, but we want to give your board the opportunity to interact with the direction that the plan is going now as it was presented to our stakeholders and the community. And then we will be coming back to you in May for your board's approval, which is also required by the state of California. Today is the last day for public comment. And with that, I will turn over the presentation to Sabrina.
Thank you, Rich, and good morning, commissioners. My name is Sabrina Sue. I'm the manager of Water Resources Development, and I'm here today with a member of my team, Ben Wong, who is the supervisor of Water Resources Strategic Planning. We will provide you an update on the development of LADWP's Urban Water Management Plan, the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan. We've been working on this document for the past year and a half and released a public review draft this February. Today's presentation will provide an overview of the 2020 UWMP and include a discussion of our outreach efforts since 2020, as well as elements within the plan, such as demand forecasting, water supply programs and projections, our long-term supply reliability analysis, our water shortage contingency plan, and lastly, we will conclude with next steps. So without further ado, I'll turn this over to Ben Wong to start the detail of the presentation.
So I'll begin with an overview and background of the Urban Water Management Plan, or the UWMP. The UWMP serves as LA's water supply reliability master plan for the next 25 years. Our latest adopted plan is their 2015 plan. And as Rich mentioned, we have our draft 2020 UWMP, which is currently available for public review and comment. The UWMP is a requirement under the Urban Water Management Planning Act, which became effective in 1984. And this act requires that water agencies that serve more than 3,000 customers or over 3,000 acre-feet per year submit a plan to the state every 5 years to ensure continued planning for water supply reliability throughout the state. Next slide, please. So another key component of the UWMP is our outreach efforts. We have conducted an extensive outreach effort for our 2020 update, starting with our stakeholder engagement group meetings. We held 5 meetings with our stakeholder engagement group, where we discussed UWMP topics, and we provided 2 updates on this initiative to the board last year. And along with that, we also conducted briefings to neighborhood council alliances, to 5 different neighborhood council alliances. Next slide. Our efforts continued through 2021, and there should be some animations on this slide. Starting in January, we held our first public information meetings to brief the general public about our planning efforts. In February, we released our public review draft on February 19th. On March 1st, we had a briefing with the NULA Standing Committee, and later in March, we had our formal public hearings where we received public comment. As Rich mentioned, we'll be returning to the board on May 25th. There's a slight typo here, for formal approval and adoption, and that's to allow us time to submit the plan to the board, to the state by July 1st. Today is the end of our public comment period, and we are also here today to provide a briefing to the board on our efforts thus far. Next slide, please. So LADWP is committed to be water strong, which has many facets to this objective. The UWMP hones in and really emphasizes the water supply reliability component of this mission. Next slide. Our 2020 UWMP reliability goals continue to build off of our goals identified in our 2015 plan, which are to develop our local water supplies through maximizing groundwater production, increasing stormwater capture, maximizing water reuse, as well as improving our water use efficiency. Next slide. Our 2020 UWP elements are structured very similarly to our 2015 plan and include a discussion of our demand forecast, our water conservation forecast, a discussion of our water supply portfolio, as well as a reliability analysis and a discussion on climate change and water energy nexus. Next slide. Okay, so starting with our demand forecast, LADWP utilizes its own internal water demand forecast tool to project demands out 25 years, starting with a series of inputs that consider demographics and socioeconomic drivers that are forecasted by the Southern California Association of Governments, along with weather and water use efficiency. We take that information, feed it into our model, which generates an output, which is our demand forecast by sector, which encompasses all of our customer sectors, which are our single and multifamily residential sectors, our commercial, governmental, and industrial use sectors, as well as non-revenue water, which includes water losses as well as unbilled uses. Next slide, please. So what does our demand forecast look like? Starting with our historic demand in this blue line, we project our demands out from a 2014 baseline. You can advance maybe 3 more times. We project our demands from our 2014 baseline, advance 1 more time. From that, sorry, back one, from that red square. So projecting those demands out to 2045 will give us the red line, which is our pre-conservation demand forecast. After considering the impacts of historic conservation achieved since 2014, as well as our projections going into the future, our ultimate water demand is that green line, which you see here on this figure. And next slide, please. So next, going into a discussion of our different water supplies.
I'm sorry, I just have a quick question regarding the demand target.
Sure.
Can you tell me what the, I mean, you've got in these sort of peaks and dips. Can you sort of explain a little bit about the peak that took place somewhere in the middle of 2015 to 2020? And what accounted for the significant drop, then peak, then dip again, down to 2020?
Right, so there is a lot of variability in our actual water usage. For that particular peak, I believe that was 2018. What we did see in the data is that it was a particularly dry year here in Southern California. And that is what we suspect to have caused an increase in demand here locally in the city.
Yeah, so each one of those peaks, if you go back, and if you go back even to the mid 80s, you'll see peaks that happen in dry years. What's interesting though is prior to, let's say, 1990, every time you had a peak and there would be a call for conservation from the city or the governor, after the dry season went away, those numbers would go back up to the previous demand. What we've seen since the 90s is after every dry period and a call for conservation, the rebound has become less and less. So you see, even though there's a series of peaks even on this slide since 2005, the overall trend is driving down, which means that we are hardening our conservation efforts. So it's not just merely built on people's behaviors, but actually that's a culmination of all those low flow toilets, shower heads, and the outdoor irrigation, as well as the pricing signal that we send through our rates.
Okay, no, thank you very much. It was just a curious pattern. I really appreciate that context.
All right, moving on to our different water supplies. LADWP has a very diverse water supply portfolio, starting with our purchased imported supplies from the State Water Project through the Metropolitan Water District, as well as the Colorado River Aqueduct. We also have our own imported source through the LA aqueducts, as well as 2 local sources through local groundwater and stormwater, as well as conservation and recycling. So I'll go into each of our projections for these supplies in detail. Starting with our LA aqueduct forecasts, we first start by looking at our historic 30-year median hydrology, and we use that to forecast demand's future, out into the future, but we also account for climate risks that we factor into those projections. Also embedded in there is considerations for also our infrastructure reliability, and we do have a number of programs and projects to continue to maintain that infrastructure. So overall, our projections over the next 25 years for average year conditions are a total of 184,200 to 190,400 acre feet per year of available LA aqueduct supply. Next slide, please. Now moving on to our local water supply program, and you can click through this one too. Our local supply sources are made up of conservation and water use efficiency, along with non-potable reuse or purple pipe. Those help to reduce our potable uses. And on the right, we have groundwater replenishment and stormwater, which increase our local supply, and together that enhances our supply reliability. And then in the middle, we have Operation Next, which is a future program that will also increase our local supply, and I'll be discussing each of these in detail. Next slide, please. Starting with conservation, our water conservation goal is to achieve 144,700 acre feet per year of additional conservation by 2045 relative to our 2014 baseline. And that's based off of the maximum cost-effective potential that was identified in the Water Conservation Potential Study that was completed in 2017. Next slide. For our local groundwater, as we all know, contamination has impeded our access to clean water in recent years. However, we have a remediation program that is projected to be completed by 2023, which will help restore our ability to access clean water in the basin and to maximize our local groundwater production. Next slide. For our stormwater forecast, our goal is to achieve 155,000 acre feet of stormwater capture potential by 2035. And this was identified as a result of the 2015 Stormwater Capture Master Plan, and the 155,000 target is between the conservative and aggressive potentials that were identified in the Stormwater Capture Master Plan. Next slide, please. Next, moving on to recycled water, our forecast for irrigation and industrial non-potable uses is to achieve 30,000 acre feet per year of reuse by 2045. On the right, our local groundwater replenishment project aims to achieve 11,000 acre feet of replenishment by 2027. Next slide. So now, Operation Next. Water supply program is a future program, as I mentioned earlier. The objective of this program is to maximize recycled water production from the Hyperion Water Reclamation Plant, to use that to build local groundwater storage and increase local supplies while collaborating with our regional partners. This program is still in its early conceptual planning phases, and at this time we do not have enough details to include considerations of this program in the UWMP reliability analysis. We do discuss the program, but we are not able to incorporate it into our reliability analysis at this time, but we will factor that in future updates of the plan as this program becomes more well-developed and we have the details to incorporate it into our formal analysis. Next slide, please. Now that I've talked about our supplies and our demand forecast, the reliability assessment takes those two to forecast our reliability over the next 25 years. First, starting at the top, our reliability is assessed under 3 different hydrologic scenarios: normal, single dry, and multi-dry years, as well as a near-term shortage assessment, which is a new requirement for the 2020 plan. That is the drought risk assessment. Next slide, please. And you can click until this graph is fully populated, but for our average year reliability, at the very top, we have our pre-conservation and post-conservation demands. Between those is our anticipated conservation. At the bottom, we have our projected LA aqueduct supplies, along with our local groundwater and recycled water supplies. And the difference between our supplies to meet our demands is additional purchases from the Metropolitan Water District to meet our projected demand. This is under an average year condition. Moving on to the next slide, for a single dry year, our demands and post-conservation domain are similar. For our LA aqueduct supplies, we anticipate much lower availability of supplies under the single dry year condition. For our groundwater supplies, we're able to respond to this dry condition by increasing our local production temporarily. And then for our recycled water supplies, those are expected to be constant. And then we'll have Metropolitan Water District purchases to make up the difference between our available supplies and demand. Next slide, please. For the drought risk assessment, this is now a forecast over the next 5 years, assessing our vulnerability to water shortage over the next 5 years. And this considers our historic driest 5 consecutive year scenario. And you can see here that the middle year of this dry year sequence is the driest in terms of the LA aqueduct. And under this condition, we can also respond by increasing our local groundwater production. And of all these supplies, the difference will be made up between our demand and projected supplies through additional purchases from the Metropolitan Water District. Next slide, please. So that concludes the contents of the Urban Water Management Plan. But now I'd like to discuss the Water Shortage Contingency Plan, which is a new requirement for the 2020 UWMP. The Water Shortage Contingency Plan is a plan that outlines methods to conduct an annual water supply and demand assessment in order to identify shortages and how to respond to those potential shortages. Next slide. The Water Shortage Contingency Plan identifies 6 standard shortage levels of 10% each and a final level of any shortage exceeding 50%. Under these shortage conditions, we have identified different response actions we can take to address these shortage gaps. So first, starting on the left of this red box is our demand reduction response actions. That's made up of our LA City's Emergency Water Conservation Plan, also known as the Conservation Ordinance. These phases will be implemented to respond to those, as well as additional potential supply augmentation responses where we can withdraw from available emergency supplies. And just to note here, we are currently in phase 2 of our conservation ordinance. So if we get into a more significant shortage, we are able to exercise our emergency supplies. And that concludes the contents of the Urban Water Management Plan and Water Shortage Contingency Plan. I'd like to now hand it back to Sabrina Sue to discuss our public comments and next steps for the plan.
Thank you, Ben. As mentioned earlier, we are in our public review and comment period. Today is the last day. We are accepting comments for consideration as we finalize both documents, but there have been some strong common themes among comments we've received thus far. These include concerns on the reliability, availability, and cost of MWD supplies, the cost of the LADWP local supply program, as well as Owens Valley uses and reduction of LA aqueduct supplies. We are continuing to review and consider comments that are received through the end of today. Next slide, please. In summary, the UWMP analysis, yes.
Can you just describe the outreach that has been done in order to ensure people were aware they had the ability to comment?
Yes, of course. For the outreach, we have posted newspaper ads for the UWMP public hearings. That is also a requirement of the Water Code. We had ads in the LA Times as well as La Opinion. And this time around, the virtual format has also allowed us to attract a lot of stakeholders that are outside the region, and the virtual hearings we had done were the two. Going back to 2020 with the outreach that we had conducted, we had also enlisted the help of the council districts to publish the public hearings or to announce the public hearings within their areas. We had the Neighborhood Council Alliance briefings to inform them of the upcoming general public meetings, as well as those public hearings that we had conducted in March. The social media outreach was also conducted through Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and we also had the website, the UWMP website, which was also linked from the Eastern Sierra website. In addition, the tribal community was also provided the information related to the public hearings and the availability of the UWMP through a bi-monthly newsletter that is provided through our Tribal Council liaison. And additionally, we had, as Ben had mentioned, provided a briefing to the LA INYO Standing Committee on March 1st.
That's helpful.
So in summary, the Urban Water Management Plan analysis shows that LADWP supplies are reliable over the next 25 years under 3 hydrological scenarios of average year, single dry year, and multiple dry years. LADWP has near-term supply reliability sufficient for a 5 consecutive dry year period. Through the Water Shortage Contingency Plan, we have plans and tools to assess water demands and supplies and shortage response actions and communication protocols. Both the 2020 UWMP and WSCP are in full compliance with the California Water Code requirements. As mentioned previously, we will be returning to the board for approval and adoption of the final plans at the May 25th board meeting in order to meet the statutory submittal deadline of July 1st, 2021. The next steps after adoption will be to submit the plan to DWR, provide copies to cities and counties served by LADWP, provide a copy to the state library, and lastly, make the plan available to the public within 30 days of adoption. That concludes our update of the UWMP, and we will be happy to take any questions that you may have at this time.
Are there any questions at this time from any member of the board? Seeing none, Dr. Pickle, did you have any comments or questions?
Yes, I have some brief comments. Today we submitted our written comments on this. The urban water management plan is very comprehensive, and they go beyond the requirements of the UWMP Act. However, they've also included, which we think is very useful, parts of what would be a master plan for water supply and resource management. But that component is incomplete because it doesn't address cost and funding estimates among some other components. And I think it'd be good to properly recognize what it doesn't include and might be how it might be covered elsewhere. But those components are not required under the urban water management plan, which focuses solely on reliability.
I think you're muted, Commissioner.
Muted.
There we go. Thank you. I was saying that the presentation of this plan certainly underscores or suggests that it is has been a very significant undertaking. And I appreciate that what we're submitting to the state, we're submitting sort of it's kind of a 5-year. We're looking at updating every 5 years. That said, I actually did have a question about reliability, availability, and cost of metropolitan water districts water, since it's so significant in terms of our ability to cover, significant drought. And also, I would like to have a more robust discussion about the aqueduct, availability of aqueduct water, LA aqueduct supplies. Perhaps not at this particular moment, but Rich, if you could just set something up so that we could have a more in-depth conversation around both those issues. That sort of that continues to jump out at me. And then finally, I am curious, although again, not appropriate as it relates to an analysis for this particular plan, but I am curious about the intersection of Operation Next and how that changes our long-term forecast and some of the modeling that we've done, or some of that, that the graphs with respect to, how supplies come into to offset potential, problems or droughts. So those are things that are of high interest.
Yeah, your comment on Next was a common comment during our presentations, and it is alluded to and discussed. But since the plan is only looking at the next 5 years, and Next does not have any impact on the next 5 years, that's why you don't see it necessarily dealing with that time period. But that's the first thing I said. I said, where's the discussion on Operation Next? We're making these great. So you are kind of confined to the requirements of the plan, but obviously we do have a lot to say about Operation Next.
And if I can add to that as well, the California Water Code does have some very specific requirements, and in the next few years, as Operation Next details are available, those details that the Water Code requires will be available to us. So as we update the 2025 Urban Water Management Plan, we do expect to have all that information available for that supply and demand analysis.
I have a comment question. It's actually in a way I guess a critique of myself and my level of absorption or communication, because this is like a subject matter that I'm very passionate about. I'm curious why it hasn't been on my radar. So I just, and I am involved, I have been, but, given COVID and just the DWP assignment now, I haven't been following up on some of the coalitions that discuss water and water issues. I haven't been very active. So I would like to not right now, this minute, but I'd like to sit down or talk briefly with someone. And I know you mentioned neighborhood councils and a few of the other outlets, but I'd like to sensitize myself and have the privilege to be able to ask you to do that. But, who are we missing, and like, why did someone like myself did not know much about the process you were going through or participate in any of your meetings? So I'd be curious. I mean, I've always trusted that things are moving forward, and, obviously, but when I got this document, I just said, oh, maybe it was called something else before. I don't know, so just, it's just really a quest for sort of clarity and knowledge on my part. It's not a critique. I'll probably uncover that I missed many pieces of communication. So I just appreciate a little 15-minute with one of you is like, what are the points of communication I really go into and people like myself go into, and how did they miss it?
We'll do that.
Because I'd like to celebrate what you do, because I trust you.
And we want to have you as an advocate as well.
Yes, exactly. I do. Because that doesn't feel good when I say I don't know. So
we'll do that. We'll reach.
I'd love to. I mean, I'm an advocate anyway, but in any event, thank you.
All right. Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments on this item?
Just one question, Rich. I think years before we participated in the LA County integrated water management plan. Are we doing that as well, or are there portions of this urban management plan that has like a regional partnership with the county?
Sabrina?
Yes, we do have the
regional collaboration with the county and with the other water agencies such as Metropolitan and our needs on the potable side for water. And for the LA County collaboration, we are engaging in the discussions, though not specifically in the same time frame as our urban water management plan, but for those types of meetings, we do participate in them.
Okay, good to know.
Okay, thank you. We will move to our next board item, and that is the information update on on IT at the department. Who will be giving that presentation, Marty?
I will.
Whoa.
Which is busy today. Change hat. Put a different hat on.
My comment to Reiko's comments on the energy imbalance market. I remember her probably as far as 2 years ago talking about this and how important it was, and IT's role in this. And boy, if IT doesn't get their act together, we're going to miss this once in a year opportunity. And I was like just tuning it out. Yeah, it's IT problem. Well, just a lesson, you never know when the GM's going to say you're now in charge of IT, so now it's your problem. So.
All right, but be careful, Marty. We don't want Rich's announcement to come tomorrow that he's following Lewis. So.
Good point.
So, I am smart enough, though, to have the aforementioned and honored Lewis Carr with me to do the presentation. So I will not be doing this solo, but. Again, if we go to the next slide, this presentation is for your commission, and it is focusing on areas of interest from the board on IT modernization. And we try to customize these every quarter. So we will take comments and concerns and interests from this meeting, and we'll address them today, obviously, but also fold them into the future. So these are the general areas we'll be talking about today. We'll be talking about just how we're organizing and developing our staff to address all the needs within the department, and then take a look at some of the more significant projects that we're working on, and then some of the operational performance measurements that we have. So we'll start with our next slide on personnel and hiring. So not too much of a different situation than other divisions within the department. We do have a number of vacancies hovering around 19% at this point. So the goal, obviously, is to increase our efforts and have measured efforts to have these hiring packages to not only to promote people within, but also to bring people into the ranks. And is the issue with all of the department, it's hard to make net gains just kind of by rearranging the deck chairs, if you will, from moving people within the division. So if we go to the next slide, the real kind of change maybe from a quarter ago is our strategy for reducing vacancies. So I'm bringing in a strategy we're using in the water system to basically overhire within the division. So what I mean by that is normally we will go out to fill a position when it's empty because somebody maybe has retired at the top of the food chain, and the person that's in the lower food chain position is promoted up, and now you have this vacancy at below. Well, we know that's going to happen. We know we can never keep up with promotions and retirement. So what we're going to do is focus on these 4 entry-level positions, because the only way you make a net gain in any division in this department is if you bring people from outside of your division, or better yet, outside from the department, and that can either be off of a list that the city has, or from an employee that is in another department within the city. So these are the entry-level positions that we have in ITSD that we will overhire. So we may only have, just to use an example, 10 positions that are currently available, where we're going to hire 10 plus X, knowing that within a year's period of time that those vacancies will be there. And that's really the way that we'll make those net gains on that 100 plus vacancy that we have. Next slide. We also recognize, there you go. We also recognize it's one thing to bring in people, but when we're going to bring in 100 people and promoting people, we need to make sure that they have the tools to be able to do their job, not just the, doing the ones and zeros, the techie kind of stuff, but be able to manage their work and manage their people. So through Lewis's initiative, we've created leadership training, and that is for a certain set of civil service classes within IT that have the biggest impact over the staff. And we have a number of topics that you can see there on the slide that will help them really do their job better. So it's enough, again, it's one thing to get the numbers, but then we also have to train our people to be able to do their work correctly and most efficiently. All right, going to the next slide. I want to begin talking about our infrastructure projects. We're going to start off on this slide and look at security infrastructure projects, and in the next number of slides, we'll look at the remaining ones here. So, and I'm going to bring in Louis on a couple of these items, but securing our environment is really not the sole responsibility of the enterprise cybersecurity system. And that group really collaborates with physical security here at the department, but also the Energy Control Center, the Power and Water Operational Technology, what we call the SCADA groups, and all the teams within ITS. So they may be kind of there as an organizing force and a driving force on a certain number of initiatives, but this really cuts across both systems and other divisions. I want to just highlight a couple of these, the Cloud Center of Excellence and the enhancement of email security. So, Louis?
Yes, just taking a moment to talk about enhancing email security. Back in October, the ITS division took on a project to help enhance our email security. And by that, we mean install technology that helps us identify the quote unquote fake emails, the phishing campaigns early on before they get into our email system. So we made some enhancements there. We continue to develop that technology. In a couple of slides, you'll see the results of that from a metrics perspective. And as we talk about our Cloud Center of Excellence, that's a team that we put together focused on cloud computing and cloud technology, not just the cyber. The team will exist under the Chief Information Security Officer, Stephen Kwok. We've hired the manager, and we continue to hire more people in that group. Their focus is not just on the cyber aspects of cloud computing, but many of the operational aspects as well, data interfaces and things of that nature, integration for identity management. So we're building this group that we call our Cloud Center of Excellence. Over time, they'll develop a level of expertise around cloud technology so that as divisions look for solutions, and some of these solutions will be in the cloud, they can come to us for guidance and advice to help us expedite the assessment of that technology and integrate it into our environment.
All right, thank you. On the next slide, a few more technology projects. Reiko obviously spoke at length on the energy imbalance market project, but I'd like to bring in Ann Santilli to talk about the budget system replacement project that we're assisting FSO with.
Thanks, Rich. Yes, the department is working on the budget system replacement. Our target go-live date is July of this year, and it looks like we will make that. We did have some challenges early on. We went through our user acceptance testing and needed to make that more robust so that everybody could complete their work. It is an ongoing process, and I'd really like to thank IT support and working with financial services to get this done. We're hoping to use this tool so that we can run multiple budget scenarios and see the impact to our customers through rates and different changes. But right now, it looks like we're back on track for July 2021. And we will be doing some improvements once it goes live, because one of the things that you learn is when you put in a new system, you don't have all the functionality you're used to in the old one. You have to build it back up. So this will be a clouded customer, and we're looking forward to a few more months with the current tool, but then moving over to the new tool with ITS's help.
Thank you, Ann. And you'll see a number of other projects on there. Again, these are not the total number that we're working on in the division, and actually many of these are how we're assisting other divisions or offices, not the least of which is the commission office and your boardroom. So there is a bit of an IT element to that, and you can see the progress we're making on that slide. On the next slide, I want to take a look at a few more technology projects. So the most significant one here, and I'll have, following this slide, 3 dedicated slides to talk about the CC&B upgrade project. But there are a number of others that obviously are of interest. Level Pay is a particular interest, and we have already, it's been probably a couple months now, I've already started our planning activities for Level Pay or Budget Pay, and we're working on the design and the requirements work for that as well. I'd like to bring Louis back in to talk about the CRM upgrades and the website rebuild requirements.
Thank you, Richard. The website rebuild requirements, we have a consultant on CSD Communications through the e-task contract that the board approved last year ago, maybe 2 years ago now. So that this is probably a 4-month contract or so to help us develop our requirements. And once we develop our requirements, then we can go identify a solution for a new website. I know that's been a request by the board for some time now, and we are making progress on that. With the CRM upgrade, we've completed some of the pre-planning activities. Some of the pre-planning activities would include just an assessment and an inventory of our technology, of some of our current capability, as we start now to look to upgrade our CRM solution. I know that has also been a topic that the board has brought to our attention, CSD, ITS, general manager's attention, multiple times. So we are moving forward on those initiatives.
Thank you. When you go to the next slide, so this is a beginning of I think 3 slides we have on the CIS upgrade project. That's the customer care and billing system that we have. So the number to look there is the 96, which actually is 97%. So we're 97% on track, and really the only area that we're lagging is the user acceptance testing. So if we can go to the next slide, before we get to some of the risk areas that have, which includes the user acceptance testing, I'd like Louis to just quickly run through what we've completed so far and how we're looking ahead to that Memorial Day weekend.
Yes, thank you, Richard. As Richard mentioned, we continue to move through our user acceptance testing phases. Right now, CSD, they're in process. Many of the groups, including FSO, LA Sanitation, meter services and field operations and water distributions, they've completed their user acceptance testing. We're also having parallel testing done, and that's exactly what it sounds like. In our production system, we run certain tasks such as bill extracts, general ledger extracts, so on and so forth, financial reports. Then in our new system that we're going to upgrade to, we do those same tasks. And as you can imagine, we check the information in the production system against the information in the new system to make sure it's accurate, and the same. Not only do we check that, but we've hired an independent third party to review our user acceptance testing and our parallel testing. So the idea is not only does LADWP staff look at that, what's in the production system, and compare it to results in the new system, but we're having an independent third party look at that information as well. CSD has started on their user communications. They've created at least one video, maybe more, to help explain some of the benefits and some of the new features and functionality in the new system. We've started our deployment and cutover planning. We're looking at about a 42-hour time frame from the time we start moving data over from the production system to the new system, going through our final sets of tests with a number of teams, including FSO and CSD, meter services. We expect that to take about 42 hours. And there are phases along checkpoints during that 42-hour point where we, again, expect to have certain tasks completed, certain milestones achieved during this deployment cutover planning. And to that point, we've done 4 mock cutovers, and we're going to do a 5th that we will call a full dress rehearsal later this month. And that allows us to go through the processes, know who's going to do what and when they're going to do it, so that when we cut over for real, we will have done it about half a dozen times. We're also doing performance testing to make sure that the new system is performing as good as, or not better in terms of speed, as the current system. We're looking at disaster recovery testing as well. We'll do our fourth instance of our disaster recovery testing. And then, as Richard mentioned, deployment. We're scheduled for the Memorial Day weekend to deploy the new system.
Yeah, coming in as an outsider to this, if it really appears and reads like a rocket launch as you're getting ready for that liftoff, and so you've got all these parallel processes and dress rehearsals, for that launch, and even on that weekend, there are still some checkpoints there where if you need to essentially abort the mission, you can, and there is another date that we can do that, but it is all systems go at this point. On the next slide, there's just 2 things to risk issues that we're managing that are areas of concern. And in light of everything else, they are manageable. There is that user acceptance testing that Louis went through, and there was a number of divisions and even other entities like sanitation that had done their testing, and CSD is the last organization to do that. They're the largest one that because they're such great users of that. We had hoped to have been completed with their testing last week. We'll be have the preliminary completion done this week and full completion done with their user acceptance testing next week. So that's that first item of concern. The second one is the mobile workforce management. So these are the concern with our the handheld units that our meter readers used, and when we first tried to open them up, they weren't communicating with the CC&B upgrade. We have since, through the help with Oracle and others, figured out what that risk or what the problem was, and the fix has been identified. So the only really area of concern at this point is if you can make all the fixes by that date. And at this point, we're projecting we will be able to do that. So the user acceptance testing at this point is 83% complete, and again, scheduled for 100% completion next week. And overall, the total project is 97% complete with a go-live date of June 1st, that would be. Next slide. So as all that goes on, we still have operational needs to consider. And looking at that top graphic, it's there to show that we're getting better at blocking phishing campaigns. Hackers always coming up with new ways to at least try to get in, but we continue to get better as well. And so that's what these metrics are trying to show there. And then on the next slide, it's to show that we are doing a number of projects, but there's also just the daily user that relies on IT for support. So this is a performance metrics for IT support, and since the beginning of the pandemic, there actually has been a 34% increase of new tickets submitted in a 12-month period between March of 2020 and February of this year compared to the previous period in the last year. And we did experience an increase of 20% of incident tickets due to cybersecurity awareness, that campaign that we had at the end of last year, fall of last year, 2020. So the service desk, again, which exists for the employees, continues to meet the target of closing 80% of the new incidents that are submitted daily. And the overall number of open tickets will be reduced once the aging incidents are cleared out. So in closing, on the next slide, again, it always comes down to people. So even though we do rely on a lot of outside help, the world goes around in IT because of our internal staff working on issues day to day. So we do have a heavy focus on hiring and training, and we're going to continue to invest in staff to do that. But we do have help from the outside with these contractors through ETAS and the Cyber Bench. And then within, as it concerns cyber, we are active actually daily at the federal, state, and local level. And actually they recognize water and power as a real player in that. And we've actually been asked by the new administration to help them as well and be part of that. So we're involved. And obviously that is not something you do solo, but we need a lot of help, and we are involved with from the federal to the local levels in doing that. So that ends this quarter's presentation, and we'll take any remaining comments, concerns, and questions.
Are there any questions from any commissioners on this report or comments?
I just have a brief observation. I know, the focus on hiring and training is well and good. That approach that you mentioned, Rich, I think is very workable and it's going to be effective. My concern is more of a higher level vision of IT and IT governance and the innovation management. We can talk about all those projects. How are we ensuring that we have the best technology that meets our needs? There are situations when we keep on using the same third-party contract. Is that contractor meeting our needs, and are they aligned with the goals that we have in terms of service delivery? How does that factor in with the leadership of IT, having that clearer vision of how IT's role will be in terms of innovation management and that architectural framework of the technology that DWP is really going to be using and making our operations more effective?
We will certainly add that into the mix at our next quarterly status meeting there. I will say, and I'm not passing the buck, but part of the reason to get a new CITO is to address some of these more global and visionary kind of things and bring somebody that, certainly not me, that has expertise with that. So maybe Marty can fill in that, but I from what I understand from Marty and Shannon, that the filling of the CITO, new CITO is progressing, and hopefully by July 1st, I think the date is, you will have a new person in there that really can start addressing some of these governance issues. Although I think on the next, in July, when we come back again, we can certainly address the governance issues, because that is something that Louis is working on with me. So we will have something to respond to that. But some of these more like more global issues, like should we, consolidate or push out divisions and things like that. And really even things obviously beyond what I can bring, just those more visionary things. That's really one of the main roles and goals of that new CITO position. So
looking forward to that. Thank you.
Yeah.
If I could chime in real quickly, Rich is absolutely right. I mean, there's a lot of questions like that. Louis had to put together a lot of pieces that had been separated before him. And then there's still, questions about whether we have the right structure or not. So when we have the new person on board, that'll be the kind of things we're looking for guidance on. And so there's, and I'm sure, in your career here, you saw where IT would reside sometimes in different divisions, sometimes separate from IT. Now, at least our IT department supports those people and has them working in different remote places. Or is the question, do you send projects to IT to get done? How's that relationship work? So those are the things that need to be worked out, and whether it's both the structure of the organization and how it reaches to the different customers within the department, as well as the technology, the right mix of in-house staff and knowledge with expert consulting services. Louis started a Binks contract, but how we do that and leverage it, those are all the questions that I hope that through the summertime, we'll have continued answers and a path forward to go on.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Dr. Pickle, did you have a comment on this presentation?
Yes, or a point of information. We're nearing completion of our total compensation study, repeating what was done several years ago. And in this update, we've added more extensive coverage of the IT component, including some positions that if needed, that DWP doesn't even have in terms of their position descriptions. So we've tried to do that up and down the scale in order to help DWP in this area. We expect results, preliminary results, within the next month or so.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I do have a couple of comments and observations and some questions. First, just kind of big picture. This has been an area of intense interest and focus for me since I arrived on the board. And I just want to acknowledge the significant progress that has been made in the time that I've been on the board in terms of bringing order and a methodical rollout or roll-up of a number of projects and foundational related issues over the last couple of years. So seeing it all come together is quite significant, and understanding that just disarray and chaos that the department found itself in with respect to the collapse of the CCB rollout now 7-8 years ago, and the all of the intervening lawsuits and monitoring and intervention from third parties, and to see us at a point where we are again in a steady, methodical, well thought out way, building the foundation to move forward and completing a number of significant items is really quite refreshing. I spoke to Marty a couple weeks ago, maybe a week ago, about CCB, and while he acknowledged that even his tremendous credentialing in engineering gave him little insight into the actual technical work that was taking place, that the way in which it was presented, gave him great confidence that we are looking at an upgrade that we can have that will be successful in the next 30 days or so. Having seen this presentation and having Louis and Rich walk us through the testing and the level of robust management of this project also gives me great confidence that we are looking at a successful rollout, and it is a very big deal for this department. I have a couple of questions about, and then the other piece, the attention to development of our IT staff is also something that I want to applaud and just acknowledge the significance around. I think Rich, at the end of the presentation, said it all comes back to people, and the fact of the matter is that we can employ all the consultants in the world, we can hire all the senior leadership in the world, but if we can't from the bottom up effectively support and manage our IT needs, we will not be successful. And it is literally, you get whiplash sometimes in these meetings as we go from a significant presentation about power, which all by itself is a significant and complex standalone business. And then we move to water, and we're looking at another very significant and very complex standalone business with a gazillion moving parts. And then we move to IT. And yet again, you step back and you think, oh my God, the level of the intricate, the significance, the moving parts, the level of expertise that is required to support our water and power businesses is in and of itself a very, very, very significant high-level undertaking. And so to see this leadership come together and to present this kind of presentation that so methodically and carefully lays out all of the moving pieces. And I realize this is just a part. These are the projects. This is not, to Rich's point, day-to-day operations or other kind of significant one-offs is quite something. So thank you for that. Could you tell me a little bit more about the identity management solution? On my presentation, it's marked as a yellow. And I think on the presentation that you showed us, it may have been a green, but I'm just curious about what that is and sort of what achieving our July 2021 target accomplishes.
Yeah, Louis can come in, but it's Louis, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's us playing with the rest of the city on the 311 project.
Yes, that's the identity management is our ability to manage kind of like the logins for our customers and share that and integrate that so that Angelenos ultimately have a single identity when they're doing services with the city. Whether you're a DWP customer or a Rec and Parks customer or a library customer, that's the vision, to have some level of integration from an authentication perspective.
Well, the reason why it's listed as yellow is basically just a resource issue that we have. So it's a combined effort between us and CSD to get that all together. So it's just, at this point, we just got this is one area where we just have too many things going on at once. So it will get done, but it won't get done on the date that we had originally promised.
Okay, but is it whatever the end target date is it what will be achieved on that when it's closed out will be this integration citywide, or is this particular project sort of a stepping stone to that? So is it the completion of that process, or is it sort of an interim step toward that process?
It's the completion of us being a part of an effort that's already going on with the city. So Angelenos can already do this in other departments, but they're kind of waiting on us to play in that space as well. So it's us completing our portion of the city's larger global effort.
Okay, terrific. And then on the new governance, risk, and compliance software, Louis, can you just tell me a little bit about what that entails and what that then permits? And is that related to our ability to play in the cloud, or is that independent of that?
It supports that, but the governance, risk, and compliance, we call it GRC, will help us establish standardized processes, practices, procedures on how we look at governance. We're starting with cybersecurity governance, how we go about taking and assessing the piece of technology or even a process that's not technology, as well as the risk. What is the risk of this technology to our environment, to the overall operations? And so we're starting at the cybersecurity level, but it is my belief that it should expand across all of IT once we get some of these processes in place for cyber GRC. A lot of those principles can be expanded across all of IT.
Okay, thank you for that. And the distribution automation project, which began in October, it says it's a multi-year project, and it's sort of taking place in power system. I'm not going to ask you to go into it in any depth right now, but I would like to see a breakout on that particular effort, just to better understand both what it's achieving and what its timelines are and any challenges that it may be running into, et cetera. So if you could make a note for the next presentation, that would be great. The level pay budget billing pre-planning, So I see that, that even the pre-planning is a TBD. Is that because we can only begin that once the CCB it says start at March 2021. So is it that we'll get more refinement around that once the upgrade of CCB is complete?
Yeah, we're still working on what the requirements are. So this is a big deal, and it impacts obviously a number of different divisions, FSO, CSD, and IT being the big one. So CSD is taking the lead on that project, and obviously it has a big part of how you integrate that into CCMB. I'm
sorry, who's taking the lead on that?
CSD.
Oh, CSD is taking the lead on level A budget billing pre-planning?
Right, just in terms of that planning. Obviously, it doesn't work unless you can plug it into CCMB. So it's not like they're the only ones or they have the most at risk. It's just they've stepped up to the plate to do that. So obviously, we can't turn on level pay at this point with CCMB, but we have understood, again, since last month, there's an expectation to get that thing rolling as soon as we can. So I will tell you, there's a lot of moving parts with that one, and it's difficult, but we're working on just really what do we want to do, what do we want to offer, what are the quote unquote requirements for that from, FSO, be able to, bring money in and pay and bills and all that kind of stuff. So just kind of work through the complexity. Once we figure out what the project is, then we can start, programming CCMB to handle that. So we will definitely on the next quarterly report have a lot more to say on that one, and even possibly before that to the board to let what we're doing on that one.
I just want to underscore, I know that there have been a number of sort of private or conversations around this issues, but I do just want to put, kind of it out there that issues around, level pay budget billing as we've got it, and also the ability to bill customers monthly. These have been issues that have been on the table for the department for a number of years and at the highest level of government. They also go to the core of our interface with our customers. And so, just making sure that we are addressing this with the level of priority that it really does deserve at this juncture is something I just want to, put as a stake in the ground. And certainly as we are emerging from COVID and seek to manage arrears and to support customers in catching up while at the same time moving forward, these tools will be incredibly important. So my firm hope would be that we would have this integration in place sometime before the end of this year, and that those integrations will be very much aligned with our strategies for how we are managing consumer debt as we move forward. So that was one piece.
Yes, the team has already seen the stake in the ground, so we know it's there.
If I could chime in, I fully concur, and this is, I've expressed that this is the first most important thing we do as soon as the upgrade is in place. So, what Rich just told me is that the programming comes following figuring out the rules and such. So that's where CSD is working with everyone to figure out what are the parameters, what are the rules, because we have to be able to tell IT exactly what the program, since the new version of CCB has a capacity, we just have to tell them what does it look like, what do the parameters look like. So that's being worked out concurrently so we don't lose time, because I do want to get level bill pay up and running as quickly as possible. To me, it is the number one priority for the first thing we modify as soon as the new CCB goes live.
Okay, well, I certainly appreciate that, and know that we've got a lot of movement in a lot of areas of the department. So we will be looking to our leadership to really take charge and to ensure that these things are occurring on schedule. So unless there are any other questions or comments, I would simply like to underscore the strategic nature of our board resolution this morning, given what I think is a significant desire to keep Mr. Carr incentivized to support us through all of these, through this high wire act that has been so successfully managed to date. So thank you all for that.
Well, and I want to thank you for your acknowledgement. Thank you for Louis, and thank you for the whole ITS team and our partners at FSO, CSD Power and Water. This kind of is our report card, if you will, every quarter. So thank you for acknowledging it.
Appreciate that. We have a final presentation today on electric vehicle rebate programs and the electric vehicle, the electric vehicle rebate program. So, and other program updates actually. So, Marty, that goes where?
Yes, so I will just kick this off, then I'm going to turn it over first to Jason Hills from the power system, and who is one of the engineers behind the design of the program and what we're trying to achieve, and then he'll turn it over to Sharon to talk about where we are. I know we've had a number of discussions about this. You'll be happy to hear that we are making significant progress on our backlog, and money is flowing. We've actually been able to send out, we're working officially toward progress payments, but actually making progress payments at this time so that the vendors who have been instrumental in making this program such a success, we'll be able to continue with the business model and continue to push out electric chargers as we've talked about in the past with the electrification goals that we have with the governor's new goals for the state of California. We're going to see this program grow tremendously. So we have been successful in really directing staff to this area. We're beginning to fill positions, although we are waiting for another list of people to be available to continue to fill additional positions in the area. And then we have also plans to improve the technology that's supporting the program, as well as revisiting all the program requirements to make sure that we're really optimizing the work that we have to do so it's not as labor intensive as it has been in the past, because we expect this program to continue to ramp up and grow more significantly even than the couple-year history that we've had. So I'll turn it over to Jason to begin to do a little background, and then we'll talk about the things that we're doing to see some more success and provide some relief for the customers that are waiting for their rebates. Go ahead, Jason.
All right. Good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Are you on screen?
Actually, good afternoon. Can you guys see me?
Yeah, here we go.
Okay.
Yes, we see you too. Thank you.
So I know the focus of this request was on the rebate programs and rebate processing. So I am just going to briefly discuss our goals, how the rebate programs have helped us achieve our goals, and then briefly touch on funding. Then I'm going to hand it over to Sharon to talk about rebate processing. So without further ado, Steve, could you move to the next slide, please? Okay. So beginning with our goals, back in December, we did present to you our goals, the citywide goals, even the state goals, as well as DWP goals. So a lot of these items listed here are the same goals that you saw in December. You got the city sustainability plan, Green New Deal, which requests 10,000 EV chargers by 2022 and 28,000 by 2028, in addition to some vehicle targets, having zero emission vehicles by 2025, 100% by 2050, and then converting the city fleet to 100% by 2028. Now here at the department, our top goal is achieving 10,000 commercial EV chargers by 2022, 25,000 by 2025, and 28,000 by 2028, which is in line with the city's goal. And in fact, it's also in line with the state goals. One of the state goals is having 250,000 charging stations in the state by 2025. And here in the city of Los Angeles, we have 10% of the vehicles, so we should be achieving 10% of the charging stations, which is why we have our 25,000 by 2025 goal. There's also a sub goal, which is to get 1,000 DC fast chargers, direct current fast chargers by 2025. Now, what's new since the last time we presented is the release of the LA100 study, and touched on that as well. What I wanted to kind of do is tie our goals to that. Really, our goals are more in alignment with the moderate case that's referenced in the LA100 study, which calls for 500,000 EVs in the city by 2028 and 580,000 by 2030. Now, there's a high case, much more aggressive, and it ramps up after 2025, aiming for 600,000 EVs by 2028 and 800,000 by 2030. We are currently in the process of evaluating those EV targets and how they relate to the needs of EV chargers. So in a couple months, we expect to have some targets tied to this, which we will also share with the Board of Commissioners.
So the LA100 study did not sort of forecast out what the say 500,000 EV vehicles would mean in terms of EV infrastructure that would be required?
Not in terms of quantity of chargers.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So that basically sums up the goals and the updates on our goals.
Another quick question. So we've got 10,000 commercial chargers, actually probably well over that amount now. I know we hit that 10,000, a little bit ago. Do we have a correlation as to, what that currently supports? Because I'm very interested in those kinds of details. We're talking about charging stations, but that's irrelevant. I mean, that only is relevant if we are connecting that to EV vehicles, where those vehicles are, et cetera. So are we looking at data at that level?
Yes. It's something we got to get the chargers in there in order to get the data. So we've just recently got a big buildup of charging stations installed in the city, and unfortunately, it's during the time of COVID. So the data that we're able to get isn't truly going to be resembling what we forecast, in terms of people traveling to work and charging at work right now. So it's something we're working on, and in fact, it's the data we're trying to gather when we're trying to develop rates with FSO and plan for other programs in terms of managing load. So right now we are building out all this infrastructure in response to the massive amounts of studies that we see and feedback surveys that we see that state that one of the top barriers is the lack of infrastructure and the fact that there's that lack of confidence in people to buy an EV if they don't see a lot of chargers out there. So we are in a way we're building it so that the EVs will come. And as far as I guess in trying to correlate this, so we are tracking the number of EVs in the city of Los Angeles, and right now we see 65,000 plug-in electric vehicles in the city of Los Angeles. We're trying to get the data to see if we can actually locate where they're at and seeing if there is a correlation between where they're being installed and the growth at the granular level, but we don't have that done yet. We're still acquiring data. But it's definitely on our radar.
Thank you.
Okay, the next slide, please. And this slide is actually touching on the targets of 10,000 the target of 10,000 charging stations by 2022, which we actually beat by 2 years. And in fact, it's continuously ramping up. We're already at 12,030 as of the end of March. And there's just a map of what we're tracking. The salmon color on the map are disadvantaged communities. So we are trying to steer more charging stations into disadvantaged communities. Also of note, which isn't written on the slide, over 9,200 of the charging stations, of those 12,000 charging stations, were actually rebated through our commercial rebate program. So we do attribute a lot of success to this program. Now on the right side, this is a pie chart just showing the funding allocations. What have we basically committed to our customers over the past 2 years, since the start of fiscal year 1920, and that total is $85 million, which is significant ramp up compared to the previous years, which I believe just since the start of fiscal year 1920 till now, that's more than twice the funding that we've allocated in all years prior. What another thing you see on this pie chart is how much of that share is going to our commercial programs. Note we have 3 commercial programs: the medium heavy duty, the DC fast charger program, and the level 2 EV charger program. And those, that's the green, the light blue, and the yellow colors on this pie chart, which attribute to over 95% of all the funding that's been allocated. So that is the summary of where we're at with our goals and our funding. I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to Sharon now to talk about rebate processing.
Great, thank you, Jason. As Jason mentioned, I'm going to give you an overview of the current EV charger rebate processing that happens in the Customer Service Division and our plan to turn around the rebates even more quickly going forward. So on this slide, it shows that currently we do not have a dedicated team specifically for EV charger rebates. And this is something that we have now designed a separate team. So we're starting to staff a completely dedicated team. As Jason said, this is a multi-year effort, and we are going to have a dedicated staff specifically to work on these projects. Right now, we've dedicated 8 emergency USSs to this effort. And eventually, once Marty mentioned, once we get the new civil service list, we're going to make that permanent staff for that team. Next slide, please. So as Jason mentioned, you can see what happened to the volume once we changed the type of the process around getting a reservation. What happened in the yellow section of this graph, this is when the process was about a customer would have to use their own resources, they'd have to build a project, and once their project was completed, they would come to us and ask for a rebate. And this put a lot of risk on the customer before, they would have to really commit to this effort, and they were unsure whether or not there'd be a reservation or a rebate available to them when they completed their project. The power system redesigned this process so that customers can submit a completed design package to the department, and then we can give them a reservation. So now these customers can build their project knowing that they are going to get a rebate upon completion of the project. And so you see the benefit of this. There's a lot more engagement in building charging stations across our city, but it also puts, a lot more administrative effort on the rebate, on the design and the approval and the QA and the rebate process. So this reflects that. Next slide. The current status, while we continue to ramp up and focus a dedicated team on these efforts, show that we have paid out a lot to date, about $45 million. Right now, we've got about $33 million of processing through checking designs, some administrative, doing some QA, verifying that this project was built, those types of things. And on the customer side, they still have committed to build projects worth $21 million in rebates. So right now, just to give some context, we have currently holding 106 completed projects that we're processing rebates for. That reflects about $8.5 million. And total number of projects that we have in many, many stages of the process are 606. So we expect to work through rebates for these completed projects sometime between, starting now and by mid to late June, all of those rebates will be completed, assuming the customer passes all the gateways, and we continue to process rebates as we move forward. Next slide.
Sharon, I have a question. How many of those rebates are commercial and how many are residential? Do you know?
This particular, I'm talking specifically about commercial rebates right now. There's about, out of the 45.6 million. I have the number here, but I think it's about 2 million in residential, and the remainder is commercial.
All right, thank you.
Next slide. This is just a very high, just for people to get the context of this process. There are many more steps than is reflected in this particular chevron, but it does show basically the customer submits their plan. We let them know that they've got enough completed to be able to submit the plan, and then they can secure that rebate reservation. We notify the customer that they do have a reservation for a rebate. Once the customer knows that, they proceed to design their project and construct their project. And now when they've completed the construction of the project, they come back to us. We do a lot of administrative, a few back and forth, work with FSO, and do a quality check, and then the rebate is paid out. Next slide. There has been some concern recently because of the massive change in the process to be able to let customers, even throughout the pandemic, to continue construction. So as I said earlier, we have chosen to formulate a completely separate dedicated team to this process. We are we're working the rebates. As I mentioned, over the past 6 weeks, we processed about 100 rebates, and in the next 6 weeks, we intend to process about another 106 completed packages. But in the meantime, we still got several hundred out there that need to be processed as customers complete their projects. So going forward, we are going to do some streamlining. We're going to automate some of the application process to reduce some of the back and forth, and we're going to work with the power system to really look at the process from the customer's perspective and determine ways that we can make it much more straightforward and easier for the customer to follow. In addition, have many, many more customer communication feedback loops. Next slide, please. So I mentioned a lot of this before. This is just sort of shows our roadmap to make this process a quicker turnaround time for customers. And for just as an example, right now we are using a lot of those dedicated emergency USSs to make contact with the customer. We did some feedback, we did some research on the feedback from the customers currently in this process and discovered that customers just weren't aware of the steps that they had to do or the steps that they were in, or if there was something that they owed us. And so since that was unclear, we've attempted to create a process of physically calling all of these customers, explaining to them where they are in the queue and what they need to do to move forward. And those are the types of communications we're going to use as a foundation for automated communications to customers going forward. The final thing I wanted to point out before I turn it back over to Jason, we also are going to implement a process where even if a customer has not fully completed their project, if they have reached a milestone that allows us to pay out a specific portion of the rebate, we will begin to do so. And we're going to work with FSO and, of course, legal to figure out the very specific process around that, but that's something that we intend to implement very soon. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Jason.
All right. So we did want to include a slide discussing equity considerations, how our rebate programs are pushing for more equitable installations of EV charging stations and adoption, especially in disadvantaged communities. And so here are some items here that we've implemented and integrated into our programs, beginning with our used EV rebate. So you're all aware that we have had used EV rebate of $1,500 for a few years now. And we are currently exploring a low-income adder. So that's currently in development with a target by end of this calendar year that we launch. But we certainly want to monitor the progress of our rebate processing to ensure that we are able to deliver anytime we make additions to our programs. Next item is a note on the $1,000 level 2 adder that's currently in effect. So as you may be aware, we did reduce our rebate amounts back in November from $5,000 to $4,000 for the commercial level 2 rebate. However, we maintained a $1,000 adder to allow disadvantaged community installations to still be obtaining $5,000 per charging station in rebates. And just a side note there, we are tracking the amount of rebate applications that we're getting in disadvantaged communities, and it's at 32%. And we want to see the next round what that's going to be at as more people are aware of this program, of this adder for disadvantaged communities. Next bullet, 64% of commercial applications received are for multi-unit dwellings. Just wanted to note that because that's I think it's a significant achievement. And it's also worth noting that the reason for this is because our rebate program allows for a large amount of installations on a single premise. And in multi-unit dwellings, that's one of the prime areas where you can manage load well, because vehicles are charging for long hours overnight. So that incentivizes a lot more installations in multi-unit dwellings. The fact that we allow for a lot of charging stations to be installed, it gives the installers incentives to install load management systems that allow these charging stations to be maximized while utilizing the existing electrical service. Next item, rebates and other funding provided for low income of the Blue LA EV car share program. Commissioner Reyes was very involved in that program. Now, all of the charging stations that have been installed, I believe there's 200 at 40 sites. Those are all charging stations that are participating in this rebate program. And there's another phase coming up that we are in discussion with the city, with the mayor's office and the Department of Transportation to continue supporting the next phase of the Blue LA car share program. And the last item here is something that launched in January. There's an EV shuttle, all electric shuttle in Lemert Park that was launched in January, which our communications and marketing team worked with Lacey to sponsor. So that's something that we are also hoping will help to promote electric vehicles and our programs in disadvantaged communities. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's a slide on the funding timelines, and this is really aimed at addressing the question that Commissioner NEEMAN Brady asked at the last board meeting. The question was, when are we going to launch the next round of funding? To explain that, I wanted to show two timelines. We've got the timeline from the past year, beginning the start of this fiscal year on the top, and then on the bottom is our proposed funding cycle, which we're proposing for all future years. Now, if you look at the top, the actual timeline that occurred, you see a scatter of dots, a scatter of funding launches, which is not ideal. We don't want to do that. We want to maintain consistency and have it spread well for us to manage our processing. You see on the top of the top bar, medium, heavy duty, and DC fast charge rebates. Those rebate cycles were launched at the midpoints of the year, July and January of this current fiscal year. However, the level 2, the program that is, the largest program, the most participation and always oversubscribed, that we had to defer until November. And with even a lower amount of only $12 million released. And because of the tremendous amount of participation, we had a wait list created, which we just funded in March of this year. Now, to directly answer Commissioner NEEMAN Brady's question, the next funding launch is shown on the bottom line here, and that's July. July of this year is our targeted launch for the next round of all programs funding, medium heavy duty, DC fast chargers, level 2, including the used EV rebates. So what we want to do is get on a cadence of releasing funding every July and every January. And I hope that answers that question for you.
Yeah, that sure cycle, but then the amount?
The amount, so we are still keeping that, up to our discretion as we get closer, because we also need to see, where we're at in terms of completing all the rebate applications that we have in the queue, because we also don't want to open it up too much where we may fall behind. We want to monitor our resources, but if ideally, If we have what we need in place, then ideally we would just split it half and half. The board authority that was approved back in August of 2019 authorized $40 million for all programs. So it would be 20 at the first half of the year and 20 in the second half of the year, ideally. But we are going to monitor where we're at and what we could ensure we could achieve and support, and then we'll adjust accordingly.
Commissioner, if I could interject, that this is in trying to really tear apart the process and finding out what the problems are. This is one of the places that we've had a real disconnect in the past. The power system has been launching the program to meet its goals, but there's not been a coordination with customer service and the amount of support that would be provided. And so, so immediately in November, we have a number of projects that are all dated November 2020, and we have a number of projects that are all dated March 2021. And so we've had these waves of projects coming in, but understanding the extent of the projects and the level of interest and having the staff ready for it was never connected, unfortunately. And so in looking at the situation, that created a lot of the problems with the handoff. And so as we look for the next cycle, we really want to make sure that this dedicated team that Sharon's been creating is in place, that they're fully trained. One of the reasons is that people that handle rebates have been handling all rebates. These rebates are much more complicated. We're also looking at what those requirements are because we want to make it less onerous to do the application. It's a 12-page application right now. We need to make sure that what we're asking for makes sense, because that's a lot of work down the road that somebody else has to then verify to be able to get the money out. So we are looking through the process from a process standpoint, looking at what we're asking for in terms of validation and verification, what methods that happens. The Ponder contract for some IT support that was approved by the board at the last meeting. We'll be directly working on trying to streamline automation for the application process, some of the communication processes that Sharon described. And so we have the pieces in place. In addition to having dedicated, human resources working on this, to make sure, because we know in the next slide you'll see that Jason's going to show what we look to ramp up to be in the future. And we know this is going to be a huge area of interest. And so we really have to, besides just throwing people at it, we have to throw people at it doing the right amount of work and the right processes and the right kind of technical support and IT support, to really make this work better than it has. And so that cycle for the next funding is also contingent on us having a better plan in place where everyone is synced together on what's required to be done, and we have all the right resources allocated, which did not happen in the past, which is why we got so far behind on the rebates. We had a bad handoff between the program and the people having to administer what landed in their lap, and we're trying to fix that. I think we're on the right track, but we have some more pieces to put in place very quickly to make this happen.
Marty, may I also add that in terms of planning and the resources is to also consider the Biden administration's infrastructure plan, which EV plays a significant piece of it, with the infrastructure gonna be ramped up as well, and the electrification of public transit agencies, buses, and federal fleet. And knowing the city of Los Angeles as a hub, what do we see is our role as a municipal utility engaged in the rebate program, and the third party folks who will be set up to put up that infrastructure and will be applying for rebates from us. So please consider that.
That's a very good point. And I think I made the analogy before. I mean, if you remember during the drought, you might remember the company called Turf Terminators, and Turf Terminators became the biggest single replacer of lawns with California Friendly Landscape. They started out with 30 or 40 people, ended up with I think over 400 people. And their business, because the Metropolitan Water District had a good rebate, and we added an identical rebate on top of it. We had the best rebate, I think, in Southern California. And that entire business was constructed on being able to live off our rebates. And so we do know that we have at least a couple companies that are actually do that now with the EV rebates. And so this is also why it's important that Sharon's folks are working on getting some some money out now for some of the applications that are in process and creating this milestone payment mechanism, because there are businesses that are living solely on the value of the rebate. And we have to look at the rebate amounts. They're a little less now than what they were in the past. But at the same time, there's a huge interest, both statewide and nationally, in supporting electrification. And if we don't step up and support getting chargers put in, then people will not have the confidence in buying electric vehicles. They won't know where they're going to be able to charge. And unlike a gas station, people need to charge every day. You can't store that much energy, and so it's almost like everyone needs a personal gas station to some extent. So we know that we have a critical role through our EV rebate program to support the goals of electrification. But we just have to get these pieces synced together between the power system's goals and what they see coming, and the amount of weight and how we let those rebates in, but then actually being able to process them. And so we really have to attack it from all these angles. But we do.
But Marty. a long conversation about process and on and on and on. I guess my observation is that our goals are not like this didn't spring upon us. We've known what our goals were for a long time. The board approved funding has been in place for some time. And it's not just our planning that's at stake, it's everybody else's planning. And so it seems to me that it becomes important for us. I mean, I get all of the pieces that we have to figure out, but there really does have to be some timeline associated with, that we're working toward to have this resolved. And it can't simply be that everything's sort of fluid until we figure it all out and we don't know when that's going to be done by. And that, I guess, is really where my interest lies. It's in not recounting all of the pieces and all of the moving parts, et cetera, but really in understanding what the objectives are with respect to actually having resolution. And some stability so that we can, July. I mean, I certainly understand the goal of being able to release in 2 equal tranches, sort of the opening for applications. So July and January. That if that's the way that we want to do it, that makes sense. Then if you're working back from there, by when will we need to have the pieces in place so that we can achieve that? And is it our goal to achieve that by this July? If it's not our goal to achieve that by this July, then to achieve it by when would be my question.
So yes, my goal is that we achieve this by July. And our current plan, Sharon has us on track that our backlog payments that are ready to qualify will be they're clearing now, and now through mid-June will be paid and up to date, and then we're continuing to add and train additional staff as well as tear apart the process. So my goal is that by July we have got ourselves into a different mode of doing this so that we can handle more rebates coming in.
So I just want to be more specific. Is it the goal to begin the new allocation process that was laid out in this presentation, to kick that off in July and then have an equal, so that we have a division in 2 tranches? And if that's the case, then I assume that gives us some parameters as to when the new systems and people will need to be in place in order to successfully process moving forward those new applications.
I'm hoping we can do the next tranche in July. We'll have to make sure that my goal is to have all the applications and things and people in place by July, but I want to make sure that those are all up and running. And I'd like to do that before we have another onslaught of applications come in. So our target would be July, but I want to make sure that all the pieces that we're doing are in place, but they are all in process now to get us there.
Okay, so we'll just revisit next month and see how we're tracking against that particular objective, right?
So, yeah, we just got the contractor on board to work on the software piece. Training has been going on, and more people are trained and working in this area. and we're in the process of tearing apart what the applications and the technical requirements are to try to streamline the amount of information that we have to deal with. So these things are moving concurrently, and so it's the combination of all of them. My goal is that they would all be in place and up and running in July, so that we can handle more. But I would reserve saying that we're ready in July to release more until we know that we have a system that will withstand the kind of customer interest that we'll have, and there is a lot of interest and a lot of growing interest. We want to make sure that our plan is going to be able to serve the customers that we're trying to attract.
Okay, terrific. Are there any other questions or comments?
There's one more slide. There's one more slide that Jason has. This is probably
okay. Next slide. All right, so this last slide basically shows where we're at currently relative to our goals, and really looking at the next step, which is getting 25,000 charging stations by 2025. What you see here, the yellow line, is the trajectory that we had established as our goal line, which we've exceeded. And the next yellow star that you see there is when we project to get to the 25,000 charging stations. So by end of 2023, we do expect 2 years ahead of schedule to also hit the 25,000 charging station goal. What we wanted to just show here is that, despite the challenges that we are going to continue to address, as far as our goals are concerned, we are still on track to hit these goals and exceed it, looking more like 35,000 charging stations by 2025. And we are going to revisit these goals to see what makes sense given the other goals that are out there now, such as the state's goal of banning gas combustion vehicles by 2035, and see how that impacts our targets. And this concludes the presentation, and open it up to further questions.
Additional questions or perhaps comments from board members? Seeing none, Dr. Pickle?
We talked to customer service as they prepared for this in detail, and we wanted to, one of the reactions was, gee, this is deja vu all over again. When it comes to, and the example is the photovoltaic rebate program, where the programs were goal-driven, but responsive to what I'd call a land rush event, where the money was made available and you had a huge number of applications come in within a few hours or a few days after the beginning of the land rush. And then they had to go through verification processes and construction and final rebate confirmation. And the processes and the questionnaires were either too complex or not complete. There were delays by the customers because they didn't understand the information that was needed of them, and there were delays in the process because of the land rush nature of the rebate release dates. So to handle these up front, there were more people needed, and hiring processes within the city take time. The processes needed to be worked on. There were technology assists, but the technology assists took years to complete. And finally, there's the incidental problem money in terms of staffing and technology development. And right now, since any rate review is in abeyance, the DWP doesn't have a clear trajectory for its possible funding cycle. So the tendency is to be tight on O&M costs in particular, and the customer service division lives on O&M costs. So that's an immediate area of concern. And in the customer service area, technology investments are often the first deferred versus technology investments in other areas. So these are 4 levels. As Marty has said, they're working on the people area, they're working on the process area. The technology area is unfortunately a longer horizon. And there's also the question of money to fund this, which a large component of is really O&M related. So it's a multi-part, multi-division challenge to get this working smoothly. I think Marty has correctly summarized the major steps, but unfortunately our first step, since we don't have the technology in place, we need to get more people in this area hired and trained, and that takes time, and we have the existing backlog. I did ask for a chart putting time frames on who did what on each of the process components, but I think focusing on the people, the process, the technology, and the money are probably more essential than diving into the timeline of the process.
Thank you for that. It is always a little frustrating to be in a deja vu situation where things are, that perhaps could have been anticipated weren't, but it is also good to know that we're making concentrated strides forward on this issue. So thank you. Any additional comments or questions? All right, seeing none, thank you. We have 2 items before moving into closed session, just housekeeping. We'll take a 20-minute break between this meeting and our closed session meeting to give our staff time to regroup and everyone else time to do the things that they need to do after sitting for nearly 3 hours. So first, we'll do our filed monthly reports. We have the Office of Chief Information Security Officer monthly report under A, and an informational report on payment of fines and penalties for environmental violations. Are there any questions or comments about either of those reports?
I will say that the Chief Information Security Officer monthly report, that's a new report for your board that we'll be giving you to give you a little bit more visibility, because you obviously are reading things in the meeting or seeing things in the media, and we want to tell you how that applies to what we're experiencing here at Water and Power.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, we're going to item 15. Commissioner Lair, you'd indicated that you did not want to vote on this item or you wanted to abstain. I just have a quick, again, housekeeping question. Is there, and that you were not interested in a presentation, is there a specific, do you have a specific concern about your participation in terms of casting a vote on this item?
Yeah, I'd like to abstain.
No, different. Do you have a concern about your participation with any party associated with this item that would make you uncomfortable voting on it?
I guess what I would say is we are on a team that's working on this project.
Okay, terrific. So in that case, just to be safe, I think that it would be appropriate for you to recuse yourself from the item altogether, as opposed to casting a vote of any kind. And in order to do that, you will, Richard, will you please assist me here? I assume she will need to actually formally leave the meeting. Is that correct?
That's correct. And then we just need to work out the logistics of her coming back in. Actually, for the closed session, I guess you can just go straight to closed session. So yes.
Okay. Okay.
So this is the last item, Commissioner Lair. You'll need to leave the meeting.
Okay.
And we'll close session in 20 minutes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thanks. Okay, and now that Commissioner Lair has left the meeting, is there a motion for item 15?
I move approval for item 15.
And do I have a second? Perfect. Thank you so very much. And can we have a roll call?
President McCLAIN-HILL.
Aye.
Vice President Reyes.
Aye.
Commissioner BARAD.
Aye.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady.
Aye.
4 ayes.
Okay, thank you so much. And we will resume. It looks like it's 12:45. So if we could be back into closed session at 1:05, that would be terrific. Thank you all. I appreciate it.
All right, Commissioner, if I might.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's
Yes.
okay. The board shall now recess into closed session at 1 p.m. For a conference with legal counsel regarding the items identified on the closed session agenda. The board shall publicly report any action taken in closed session and the vote or abstention of every member present thereon in accordance with section 54957.1 of the California Government Code. Thank you.
Thank you so much.